Welcome to One on One. A tendency for board chairmen to move down from chair to CEO is becoming the norm. Earlier this year, it was Zambia Railways, and now it's ZCCMIH. A move compared to a friend of mine saying it's like Shibukombe assuming the bride. On one-on-one, this evening, we discussed this trend with Kelvin Chisanga, an economist. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, dear viewers. Thank you so much.
Let's digress a little bit,
Sure.
Kevin. Your thoughts about what has been going on.
Well, maybe just to give a tribute regarding the economic legacy of the late president, we understand that it was one of the infrastructure-driven sort of personality where we saw some really good elements that triggered to have happened in healthy infrastructure, roads, and many other that we can actually speak from there. So what I should be able to say is that at a time when Zambia needed this, actually, he came in as a transition president. He made a bridge into what we are seeing today. So even when you speak of the current situation where there are a lot of employment in health, education, it's because there was a background that was laid, and the infrastructure is actually a precursor in this case.
Another issue, before we go to the major matters of our discussion this morning, we see the kwacha, appreciating. And yesterday I was talking to colleagues of mine who were telling that there's bound to be lots of money flowing into the country, lots of investments, as we go towards 2026. The question is, the first part of the question, can this appreciation be sustained?
Yes, it can be sustained based on certain key parameters that we need to put in place. What we are seeing currently happening is that we have got a seasonal inflow of taxes that are being paid, various tax structures, be it payee, withholding tax and mineral royalties, and inclusive also the aspect of dividend payouts from the mines. So what we are seeing in the current prevailing condition is that we have a lot of influx of dollars coming in the local market, and also it's contrasting the demand that is also taking place in the kwacha. So kwacha has got high demand as it is right now. So that is what is actually happening today. And also complemented with the agricultural output, maize, tobacco marketing season also complementing strongly from that perspective. So what we see really taking place is a situation where a lot of sentimental aspects also are at play. Maybe if we tend to navigate very well with IMF-related discussion, that can also sustain the kwacha. And again, also the heavy pickup that comes in the third quarter, where we start importing farming inputs and also working around issues of oil importation as well, and much more. As we go toward the seasonal demand for Christmas goodies and many others, if we are able to see how we can moderate this at a point where the dollar is, trading very low, that can also help. But again, the main complementing factor that has also made the dollar to behave the way it is, because the global market environment is also ticking very low on the dollar side. So these are just the confluence of factors at play. But what we see really standing very strongly is that if we can also have a strong contentment on export of maize, then we'll sustain the dollar, because that is also one of the key factors which can drive the goodwill that we are able to see.
Lots of money, that's going to flow into the country. What are the positive factors, to this? I said this, because, some people might be saying, look, the government is engineering this, because we're going towards the elections.
Well, right now we've got some good positive combination of factors at play. As I mentioned, we've got issues to do with IMF-related talks. Depending on which way we are going to take our discussion in regards to the IMF, I expect that we are almost getting to a closure of this program. We may be able to see, some bit of stability in terms of what we should be able to see from there. But again, the bottom line here is that kwacha can only perform with this stability, if we basically have our grip on the export importing processes, because that is where we drive a lot of pressure. If we have also a lot of energy around mining, where it is showing some good substantial impact, we'll be able now to see some of these things also working out from that perspective. So what we see basically is playing out right now is that we've got some good atmosphere on the mining sector, where we have seen that the unexpected production output from mining will be also able to work with us, and together with the agricultural sector, which has also registered the bumper harvest, recording 3.6 million metric tons of maize gives a quantifiable base for Zambia. If we tend to also be weak and export some of this, then we will be able to reverse some of these good factors that we are able to see on the table.
Right.
Yes.
The Americans have been renowned to support, the social sector in our country. We see them supporting trade now. We see them, getting into a partnership with mining, firms. How do you explain this, change of, economic environment?
Okay, so beginning of this year, and maybe just as we go, that is one of the elements which we were able to see. We were expecting to land this economy on a soft landing. And of course, with the sharp changes in the policies uncertainty aspect, we were thinking that we can now drive ourselves into the recession. But we're not going to have a recession. We're going just to have a weaker growth going into the global patterns. And especially when we are looking at also geopolitical tensions that is taking place, talk of the recent Israel and Iran and many others, they are giving that substantial effect to energy sources as well as energy products. So meaning our growth can actually be compromised in a way. But when it comes to maybe Zambian perspective in terms of public resource meeting social expenditure and protection, we seem to have demanding pressure from there. Already the economy is growing very slow, and also balancing up with the social protection, it becomes quite challenging, especially even when you, by extension, we look at the aspect of donor cuts that has actually taken place, moderating that gap in the budget implementation process. That becomes a challenge. So we just need to see how best we can balance in between what we have, especially when we are meeting public expectation of education, health, and many others that are centered on the public protection.
Right. The mining sector still remains as the key driver of our economy, and we're sitting on massive, money here, especially in terms of precious minerals. But the way, it is managed, leaves me really upset, for lack of a better way of putting it. The haphazardness of managing, the gold mine sector, for example, is just unbelievable. Your thoughts on that?
Okay, so the Zambian context, we may be able to understand that Zambia, almost like 20 years ago, was ticking to be one of the best producer in Africa. We were topping of over all these other nations that are actually engaged into mining of copper, particularly of interest would be DRC. Zambia changed because of policy shifts that we went on to shadow box many times. You can imagine a consistency in the policy regime has not been there. And what we have seen that from 2008 up to even just maybe 2021, we've seen shadow boxing of policies. That has now the one which has taken us backward, and now even having the flank back of Congo. Congo is topping now, despite even the political confusion and many other war-related cases. So it beats me to a point where maybe I should be able to say that. It's high time also we need to look at diversity strategy in terms of mineral. We are coming up with some of the major emerging mineral assets which should be able to play a critical component into our formulation of our economic patterns. So what I should be able to say is that at a point also when we have super cycle demand in copper, where we're driving green transition and many others, we have not been able to organize. Maybe I should be able to preempt this to say that it goes also into the aspect of corporate affairs, corporate governance principles. So I think as we dive into this, it will also link to what we should be able to see. But the bottom line is that we have failed to perform at peak even when the market is having a cycle boom,
Yeah.
which should be able to give us, a complementing element from there. Yes.
One question, before we get back to the mainstream of our, discussion, one issue that disturbs me is the foreign exchange, act. In a small economy, like this, I mean, it's so easy to take the money, out. I mean, you look at South Africa, you look at Namibia, countries in the region, even Nigeria. It's a tussle, to take, a foreign exchange out of the country. And from what I understand, again, we're discussing yesterday that some corporate companies, some top, companies are moving or thinking of moving their activities to Zambia because it is easy to externalize, foreign exchange. Again, your thoughts on that?
Okay, so on the matters of capital flight, where most of the multinational or international companies have actually been able to exercise at the peak, I think this is what was actually even being undertaken by the central bank. I'm sure you must be able to have heard of something like export trading proceed directives. The main aim was to actually account for export receipts and see all the transactions related to Zambia's primary resource and many other sectors that are giving at quantifiable benefits. But again, also what we have seen in this case that we have failed to kick it off, owing to the fact that there are some prior investment policies that are linked to area conditions, meaning what we're seeing also are some element of overlapping or conflict that could have also come up with other tax structures. Like, for example, the export tracking system is contradicting or has been contradicting with the tax rule 18, which actually most of the mines have actually been able to utilize from there. Then again, the framework is that whatever we produce from the primary source, mining in particular, we don't put them in value addition, except maybe when you talk of Zamefa, putting into cables and many others. But the large chunk of what we extract from the mine go like that, without even having to separate if it's cobalt, if it's what, it goes in raw form. So, and again, by extension, when you go to commercial side of activities, the money does not eat back into our treasury. So that as being a talk to say, how can we work it out to basically work out this? But because of the conflicting and arm twist element that come with the private sector, particularly the mining stakeholders, this also puts Zambia in a very awkward situation. Remember the case here, I'm sure we'll be able to touch on some of these things. It's coming from that background. Of course, they could be sensitive as they can, but the bottom line that we just need to see how best can we flow the interest into this some of these activities that we're seeing on the table. The biggest factor in terms of mining aspect that we keep changing a lot of things, and much to this also we don't favor the artisanal miners from that perspective, because you see, you may be able to have a small capital which may be applied to work maybe with a mine in Mfumbwe or Shangombo or wherever, but again also the issue that your tax structure will be applicable as much as a big scale miner. So that also becomes a challenge even now for growth from the indigenous point of view, meaning you as Ambassador Frank Mutubira, you can't participate because already your level of police treatment will be treated or moderated to large scale miners, and that is not something that is scaling down to see how best we can champion local context policies from that perspective.
As a rider to that, quickly, a flip side of that, it's very difficult, for you and me, Zambians, to facilitate, a big, investment, outlet, because there's eagle's eye on you to ask questions as to where you got the money from, and I understand ZRA is coming up with a law, to find out. Were you driving a big car, expensive car? Where you got it from? Why am I saying this? Some of the countries, Switzerland, for example, they rarely ask you where you're getting the money from. Kenya's economy, part of it is the money from Somalia, pirates. So many countries. Isn't this retrogressive, economically? I'm not saying we do, illegal things, but there are some people with genuine money, but just because they scrutinize, they just decide it's not worth it.
Okay, that can be answered in multiple ways, but the beginning point is that our Zambian educational culture gives us a different feeling around some of these things, especially when you look at the way we do business, the way we conduct ourselves. When you're given an opportunity to supply, maybe in a company, for example, if you're even given an upfront payment to actually activate or advance your contract, it becomes ionic to a point where you find somebody just lashes to buy a BMW or a Benz. And again, also the aspect of not being transparent also comes out to be from there. And again, if I can extend a number of reasoning features here, we may talk of aspect to do with the governing pattern that we see in most of these companies, and just generally the central government system as well at some point when it comes to procurement aspect. So this goes down to say that obviously what we should be able to say is that we need now to cultivate a culture which should be able to be possessive, doing something good. Maybe again the aspect of also liking to see wealth creation through the government positions, that also creates serious economic leakage. And again, what we have seen over time is that we basically inclined ourselves to certain position like MP for you to get to the ladder of wealth and many other aspects. So we are not driving a perspective of making things from that perspective. What we should be able to do, or even think as people in this country, is that whenever I'm doing business, I should be aspiring to be a leader in business. That aspect is not there. And that's the reason why maybe the culture has overshadowed with mostly people even working for government, thinking that if you have money as the ambassador Frank Mutubira, you must have stolen somewhere else. The only thing to say, the only way you can make money is through dubious means. So that has been cacated so much. The aspect of indoctrinating our thinking like that is what has caused us to where we are. And much more is what is now even bringing to the fore of what we are seeing in most of the activities. Be it maybe you are a minister, you all of a sudden, after being a minister, you become wealthy.
Absolutely.
When you are maybe even just an MG in some company, you are struggling. Suddenly, after you find yourself to be having so much of resources and assets. So those are the issues that we have actually built. So it's something that has been built as well from that perspective. But again, also I can't blame what is happening. Maybe also we just need to reshape our mindset and put ourselves into actionable sort of efforts so that we can drive wealth creation and make it from there.
We're talking about corporate governance, this evening, precipitated by what is going on in Zambia Railways and ZCCMI, where chairman have taken over the position of CEO. Before we delve into that, for the sake of our viewers, what actually is corporate governance?
Okay, corporate governance is a set of rules, objectives, policies, ethical more of compass, monofiber sort of conduct, and also it involves principles of goodwill, and also integrity, responsibility. It has got so much that I cannot even just quantify to say about this, but it's a set of rules which basically govern how we should be able to work in the corporate entity when it comes to who gives the attorney power of attorney, who gives the power to this, or who actually transact, or who should be able to be responsible in this. It comes out with different aspect of responsibility. It's also always important that corporate governance needs to be anchored with a perspective of financial and also an aspect of delivering policy as well.
The guard of honor changed at Zambia Railways, and now ZCCMIH, where a chairman takes over, the position of, CEO. Is this right in terms of corporate, governance? Was diligence process, followed? How did they arrive here?
I don't think there is anything near to transparency in all this undertaking. And this is the more reason why it even bothers a lot of people, particularly the stakeholders, including some of us. Look, it's a situation where we expect the IST premier investor to actually exercise good governance practice and standard. If anything that comes with diversion like of this nature, it raises a lot of concern, serious concern for that matter. Especially that we are looking at something that anchors Zambia's economic importance. The mining sector is anchored by this particular outfit. So if we tend to have mismanagement, mishandling of some sort, and mistrust also comes in there, then it becomes a questionable matter. It's something that has now to be given a second thought when it comes to anything else. So it also borders on the aspect to do with investment appetite. It makes some reduction of influence and many other aspects that we should be able to see. So what we see really coming there as a matter of importance is a consequence of losing trust.
Yeah.
Yes.
Surely this is an indictment on IDC, which oversees these companies, and unfortunately, at the helm as chairman is the president of this country. How can this be questioned then? What is the impact on IDC and the general governance of these parastatals under IDC and IDC itself?
As I hinted, it's something that has now ethical concerns. I'm sure a lot of stakeholders are now expressing views and concerns around this matter. It's something that maybe I would say it actually possesses a certain element of mistrust, right from the word go, because there's no way you can come from a top
absolutely to a lower
position, and for that matter, even when you look at the corporate governance ethics, do not permit to go that way. What we should have done, obviously, yes, because of the loose end of our policy gaps, maybe that's the reason why we have found ourselves into this. Because I did a bit of a study to say, look, what could have led this? What I've just found that there is a missing element in the policy gap when it comes to cooling off period. What should have happened was that if I happen to be an active member of the board, if I want to go down there, it has to give me about a minimum of about 6 months to 12 months for me to actually become just an ordinary person, then I enter there. But what has happened is that it's not something that was near transparency, accountability, and fairness, even much more competitive in recruitment processes, because what we see is a situation where somebody has got inside information, then jumps on the gun, and that brings a lot of concerns. It borders on ethics, it borders on trust, and many others. Even when you go to investors' reduced appetite, risk appetite, it's going to be seen there as a long-term consequences. Look, we are at a point where we want to drive mining sector to 3 million metric tons. And this outfit seeming to be the one that can actually help us to drive that agenda. So now, if it's find itself into these circumstances, it becomes a questionable situation, very awkward for that matter. And again, this trend, maybe just by extension, this trend which has gone now into Zambia's corporate boards, I think it's not showing any boardroom excellence.
Absolutely.
Maybe the best is we need to revise ourselves. Ambassador Frank Mutubila, if I happen to be selected on the board from the private sector, what they are trying to say or to do there is that they are tapping into my unique character of professionalism, so that I can actually help to infuse my credibility and my work into that board, so that it can be more viable and credible. By extension, we'll be able to see that the board actually goes in between the shareholder and the executive management board this side, or rather a team. So what basically plays out there is that there are some privileged information that I can find myself as a board member, where the executive director, who happens to be CEO or MD, cannot cross over to that information because I'm in between.
Yeah.
Now imagine I'm the one presiding over as a chairman. I know every sensitive information about the company. Then I scale down to a chief executive officer. That is a capture already. What is happening is a coup that has taken place.
Yeah.
And it's not something that we cannot speak to be a good thing. But I'll tell you the truth. The truth is that it's more of also a political inclined aspect, this move. Because transition from the top man,
Yeah.
a chairperson, into the executive, that raises a very big question. As we speak, it's something that will be a case study in most of the studies.
Yeah.
As far as corporate governance is concerned. Already, the Institute of Directors of Zambia have raised a serious concern about this. And it's something that everyone is talking to say, look, it looks like you mentioned,
Yeah.
Chubukombe scaling down to,
Yeah.
which is not something that has a moral fiber in it. And also it doesn't have also an iota of ethical compass around this, because again it now just brings a bit of confusion to say how are we going to work.
Absolutely.
Because when you're given that opportunity as a board of director member, you are identified from your unique talent, disposition, which you'll be able now to bring into that company so that the company can perform at peak. Even when you look at the balance scorecard and many other matrices that you should be able to use to assess their performance and everything else, the ball lies with the board because it's a controlling, advisory, and also governance body, which is structured to actually govern the company and direct a lot of other things that should be able to happen from there.
I am, conscious of the fact that because I've served on the board. Not all board chairmen have got the expertise in that particular institutions. I know you've talked about some of the repercussions. What are some of the key repercussions and in terms of operations of such a big company?
Okay, so if you were to scale it down to the recent issue that happened, obviously the implication can be one: we're going to lose long-term effect of having that demand in regards to investment. Already the investment patterns in the mining sector has been overwhelming, where we are receiving a number of good investment projects. And with this turn of things, actually at the point when we are even now aligning ourselves to debt restructuring process, and we believe that the mining can drive the agenda to actually make enough revenue and many other aspects that should be able to come from there. Key aspect is the job creation and also balancing up the economic factors. It's complementing, helping from that perspective. So the implication that will be there is that we'll have lost trust as far as the public and the investors out there, because we're not doing the best practices that need to be done there, especially when we know that the ethical standard requires that we need to be transparent, fairness, and also accountability should be there. So if we tend to have this shortcut kind of or cutting corners of some sort, then becomes a challenging factor as it is right now, because we cannot build the economy from that basis. In fact, if anything, as I mentioned, this is a apex mining body in essence, because it has stakes in most of the mine across the country, dotted across, and much to this also, it has also extensive investment portfolio in others like hospitality and many other aspects. So that also brings a difficult situation for us to understand if I can also trade on the stock market, buying the shares in ZCCM becomes a difficult situation. Then the other thing is that obviously what we are putting on the table here is that it's giving us a limited transparent aspect. There hasn't been any proper communication in regards to what has happened. We should have expected to have some measurable and corrective approach to what has happened. They should have been maybe a press release to identify or to give us that feeling to say, look, what has happened is ABCD explanation in some sort, so that we know where we're standing. But with the quietness and with what is happening, because you see, the challenge that is there is that the executive director was chosen a day after his resignation.
Wow.
And it's just barely barely 24 days,
Yeah.
24 hours. So
Yeah.
that becomes a challenging factor. You see, so those are the implications to say, even if I was about to work for the ZCCM, how do I work? Because I'm
Yeah.
already seeing what's happening. And again, the implication will be that the internal stakeholders, employees, will not have so much confidence
Yeah.
in the CEO. Even when he makes certain decisions, he'll just say, look, you came this way. How
Yeah.
do you want me to do the correct way?
Yeah.
Even when it comes to the board itself, there will be compromising aspect that will happen there. They will say, remember what you did. So the credibility of the independent
Yeah.
directors and the board itself will be compromised. There won't be that seriousness that we should be able to see it from a distance. So those are the implications that we see. And that also speaks into investment. If you are as an investor, you want to
Yeah.
pumping money there, then you'll see what's happening. You can't.
Yeah.
So those are the implications as well. So there are quite a number of them that are standing
Yeah.
to be potential risks that we are able to see from this.
Kelvin, you've mentioned that there was no cooling in a period here. The board, knew that this transition was wrong. The million question is, why did this go on? And having said that, what does this say about the supervisory body, in this case, IDC?
It puts IDC in a very questionable state of being, especially when you look at the ethical stance that we see with the IDC being a holding company and having more than 60% shareholding in that company. And at a point where we are also consolidating a number of investment activities in the country, be it in agriculture, transport, and many others. So this basically puts the IDC at a point where we are exposed. This has exposed all of us, actually, if it's in that case, because we have vested interest. Each and every Zambians has a vested interest in this, even not only Zambians and other stakeholders as well. The ZCCM IH has three marketplace where they have listed on the stock market here in Lusaka, and also policy, I'm sure UK as well. So you can imagine how the outsider investors are looking at us. They are basically laughing at us. So that is a laughable case for our case as Zambians and many other stakeholders that are involved into this, even when it comes to corporate governance. For me, I think it's even now brings shame on our education, because we get to school to learn some of these things, but even just by nature of not exposed to education, but even just the inner side of our lives, we should be able to see that what I'm doing is wrong. Maybe what should have been done in this case, that the MD should have just realized this, to say, no, what I've done is wrong. Let me relinquish myself. Let me resign. Those are the things that we should have expected to see after maybe some few sentiment passing here and there. And again, the other aspect should have been the board itself should have made a reversal of what has happened. Then that credibility will be sustained. Again, it will also give a very good perspective for IDC as well. What we are seeing happening and continuously happening, I think it's going to land us in a very serious problem as far as corporate governance is concerned. Yes.
Where are the shareholders in this? IDC is a shareholder. What about the minority, shareholders? Do they have a say? Shouldn't they have a say in this?
I'm sure once we tend to, or once the company goes for annual general meeting, these will be expressive interests, concerns as well. And again, also, we have NAPSA into it. We have Zambia, DLZ, I mean. We've got, of course, minority shareholders are almost less than 10%. But again, also, that does not give so much of the confidence that we should be able to see with this public listed company. It's even now questions into what we have seen. The Zambia governance, corporate governance conduct or act does not cover so much of the upgraded aspect. What we are seeing from that piece of literature is that it was revised a long time ago, 2005, if I may able to remember. But again, what we need to do is to look at the patterns and the dynamic of changes that we are seeing in the global market. And we expect all listed companies to actually get to have those aspects of best international practices and standard as well in regards to corporate governance. So what we should be able to see now is that ZCCMI on the stock market, it is very good stock. It has been doing very, very good actually. But with the turn of this aspect, I think it's now going to have less value in a way, because that will come as a consequence of a long term. It has been difficult. Even you, Ambassador Frank Mutubila, you may be able to know that when you go in the stock market, the most difficult trade or stock to trade in was ZCM. But with the aspect of what has been happening, it puts a lot of things in question. And much more questionable in the sense that the CEO on the ground of the then CEO on the ground of separation, there hadn't been any extensive explanation. They just said he's separated. And then the aspect of not advertising for the job also raises a lot of questions. So if only maybe we can look at how best can we uphold the ethical standards and also the moral, aspect around some of these things, I think it would really help. For us to change Zambia, I think we need to be more patriotic. We need to look at how best can we create a Zambia that even my grandchild will be able to come and enjoy. If you have that mindset, I think it will help us. Yes.
The longevity of CEOs at ZCCM has been pretty, short for such an important, institution. The impact again, and how do you explain that?
This is the more reason why maybe it is overburdened. I'll tell you the truth. The truth is, when you look at even just the extraordinary meeting or even just general meetings about ZCM, IH, mostly the talks are in dollars, billions. So that speaks a lot to say, look, what we should be able to do is maybe to find a striking balance to say, look, can we create a special division within this investment holdings, so that if it's Ambassador Frankie Mutubila can look at this company which is doing manganese, all the portfolios under manganese are falling under this man. And again, the aspect of having duplication in the boards as well, it's also an important aspect that we need to also underscore from there. Of course, not diverting from your question, but the bottom line that has happened so much of the time is that there has also been overlapping aspect. You may be a board member on maybe ZCCM, and you may be a board member maybe on the IDC. I'm just speculating, but the bottom line that if we have such kind of arrangement in the function, then that becomes a compromised situation, because it's what we're talking about, where somebody is getting down from a top to down, meaning he's got all the sensitive information, he's able to get that privileged information and use it to his own advantage. If anything, my suggestion would be, if you are a director on ZCCM IH, you should not be a director in any of the mining companies across. That should be able to help, so that you can have a good influence around the decision that should be able to be anchored from there. And again, we should also do the best interest in making sure that there is a better communication strategy or information that should be able to come from there. It's the same with what maybe I may be able to point out here is that we've got limited information regarding the mining structure and operations. The biggest factor here is that we had the KCM issue, we had the Mopani issue, where this company is invested into there. Because of maybe the way they were negotiating on our behalf, and so many times, we found that we are not basically getting more information as it should be. And instead now we are getting information from the parent ministry, Minister of Mines. We should have found ourselves having more experts with this organization or holding company, so that they can drive the agenda of negotiation for us, and also championing the good elements of production from there, so that even when the dividends come, it should be able to speak to say, this outfit, investment holding for Zambians, is making so much and is doing this. But if we basically just take ourselves to the previous ZCCM as we had, then it becomes difficult. We need to see profit returns. We need to see some of this delivering policy as well, policy goals in essence. Especially that we have got a policy to drive 3 million output. That speaks a lot. So again, it comes back to what we should be able to see. We are doing geo mapping across the country. This should have been the main precursor to actually set the tone, to see how best we can invest in the minerals across the country.
Yeah.
Some of the companies or some of the minerals that we can be finding, maybe in Shangombo or wherever we are trying to do the surveys, ZCCM should even be a first one to say this is 100% ours.
Yeah.
Then let me look for equity partner or look for this. That's what we should be able to see. But again, that is now where I'm saying there must be some elements of conflict as well at some point as we speak into this.
Most of the companies, and especially companies under IDC, are not doing well. Obviously, to an extent, this points to the caliber, of the board. And I'm aware that there's so many clashes between the board and management. This points to questions of how these board members, are picked, are appointed. Your thoughts on that?
I think we are too political in most of the appointments. And again, also it dives so much into the political patronage that we normally viewed from the politics side of things, because there has been a tendency, very strong one, to say that if you have been a supporter of Party B, Party A, once they get into power, you need to have a stake. And the stake is by appointing you, or maybe on a board, or wherever, or whatever it is. Of course, yes, those can happen, but it should also be a merit-based appointment, based on the, professional forte that you can drive into those companies, into those activities, even when it comes to government agencies or ministry, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But again, also, there must be a way we can build a case around some of these appointments. Yes, I like the idea of at some point, let's say IH, at some point 2 years ago, they flashed adverts where they said they want to have directors be appointed through a common selection, and that advert was running in the press newspapers and many other media formats. But again, what transpired after people have applied for directorship or possible directorship in those companies, we haven't had anything to this effect. So maybe what we need to do is to look at how best can we cultivate unique talents based on commendation, based on selection, maybe with a pool of people that should be able to be there. Perhaps also maybe this should now come to bring a strong consensus arrangement where people should be driven to actually have some sort of voices around some of these public inclined activities. But again, also, the framework can't be there. But what we should be able to see is that we need to keep innovating. Seeing how best we can work around this model, so that once we create a special modality to work around this thing, it can now bring a beneficial aspect to the public resource. So I would say that yes, political alignment also brings to this, and much of what we see now happening here and there, it's a political influence. Some of these boards that are being selected, they are based on a friend, a family, people that helped us and all that. So that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
What we need to do is let's build Zambia that should be able to be bound with integrity, meritocracy, and many other aspects that we should be able to put on the table. If we just can jump on our friends, our family, our associates, that becomes a difficult situation to rule and bring the proper governance pattern and system. So maybe it's high time that we also need to institute key governance principles and ensure that even at school level, we need to emphasize this so that it can actually help us. What we need is to cultivate a culture that should be able to look at ethical principles. Certain things should not be taught in school. Some of these things should be learned and should also be a matter of self-denial, where you say, okay, for me to do this, I just need to do ABCD. I think that element should come so strong in our thinking, and that is what's going to help us going forward.
Right. 3 issues in one question. One, there's a moral aspect, to this. To the former chair and now, CEO, can he live with this? And I think he may, because I've seen this happen elsewhere, and I'm not saying the CEO, resign. Think through that. Too. Um, is it possible to reverse this, and who can, reverse this? And finally, how can IDC and even the board redeem, themselves from this?
Okay, so in terms of making decision around this issue, of course, it's to do more of a legal aspect, inclined to contractual arrangement that has actually been done there, and also in terms of just looking at the moral aspect, I think it's more to do with him now, where he has to say that I think it will border on his performance at the end of it all. What will happen is that. Of course, there will be some compromising, elements and pockets of confusion here and there, based on certain aspects that should be able to happen internally. And again, as it is in this case, it is also a spotlight to see how weak the board is actually prevailing with the condition. And that brings a number of questions as well in regards to the future prospects, investment, and many other growth-centered activities. Yes, in terms of reversing, it may be reversed in a sense that if there is a petition, if people petition and other key stakeholders petition to this, it can actually have some investigative sort of arrangement in this. But again, also the other aspect with the IDC, I think for IDC it shows and it sends a very bad signal in regard to corporate governance. And also it shows to say they could have been an invisible hand, overtaking some of this and making this decision. You may be privy to know that just quite recently we have a very crucial investor in Mopani, Delta, through IHRC or something like that. So what basically prevailed in this case that when we had an extraordinary meeting as Zambians, through ZCCM IH, the current MD who was being appointed was the one who was chairing this. You see? So that also becomes a bit of a compromise situation in a way. It also sends some bad signal to the investment class there. And again, what we should be able to see playing out here is that it will leave a dented mark. Even when this person is disposing some work or maybe conducting his duties, a number of other people who have questionable habits toward this. And this also smells a number of things that one can say. But again, it shows also how deepened, economic linkages are also falling in place. It can be a matter of even just knowing where the big war for public resource leakage can be because of what has happened. So it has a lot of compendium of cases actually.
Would you have expected the board to be reconstituted? Why is this? The now CEO, former chair, he's got colleagues, on the board, presiding over him. I mean, your thoughts on that?
Ambassador, I have read this several times, and I now have to reiterate it in this way. What has happened is a serious capture. It's most like you have your daughter and your son, and maybe you are the CEO in that family setup. Then you decide to say, okay, let me now marry my daughter, so that the two of us now can learn things. Okay, maybe the context can be wrong, but whatever system that has been made, it's ethically wrong, and that's the reason why there has been echoes of unethical concerns on this matter, starting with the EIZ president, Kaluba, mentioned about this, also extending to many others, including some of us calling to say, I think this is unethical. For the good of this nation, some of us will have to fight for this because, you see, the issue is that we need to do the correct thing. so that we can build this nation without any iota of collaborative or any conflict of interest risks. Otherwise, what will happen as we go in future? We have a compromised wealth. Meaning, what we see as we go, we'll start now spending more money investigating some of this through judiciary and many other public officers, when we can basically avoid some of these things that happen today. So it's important that we reallocate some of these resources for future use elsewhere, other than starting following up with the judicial process and the legal matters.
The Economic Association of Zambia, together with Institute of Directors, they raised their concern, they've complained. That's it that they can do? Anything else apart from raising the alarm?
Well, I feel maybe the biggest factor is that we've got a lot of vacuums that have been created in our operation, be it in public or private sector. I think there's a need to have a framework or a board that should be able to work out this. Otherwise, maybe the best way one can do is to take it to the court of law. High Court should be able to handle this issue where somebody maybe appeal to say this can be reversed. That can actually can happen from there. Because obviously, when you look at the company economic importance to Zambia, it boils down to everyone across, meaning even you, ambassador, you've got interest. The president has got interest in there. Everyone has got interest. So it's something that basically, if we are to look at it in a critical way, it requires that we need to do the correct thing. Otherwise, if there will be that a dormance of some sort, we'll be able to see people now taking action in a way that it will now be legal issue, or it will be a petition to the board, or it will be a petition to IDC. Perhaps even now goes down to the management itself. They can even petition to the management before they escalate to any other stages. Yes.
You made reference to a political hand in this. The president is chair of IDC. I remember raising this issue at a press in a conference, and subsequently, what a statement, I think, from the Minister of Commerce, Minister of Information, that the president was going to, step aside. This hasn't happened, yet. What would you like to see?
Well, I think the correct measure should be done. Corrective measure in the sense that there must be an approachable action which should be able to be seen being doable in this case. Otherwise, if we remain silent on it and everyone remains silent on it, it leaves us now a certain precedence which will be able to be practiced across the entire system, even now extending to the central government, because we'll be able to see some of these things. Ambassador, I have hinted this to you. When you are given a privilege as an position to be a member on the board, and for that matter, you are from a private sector, it tells you a big story. It gives you a big picture to say you have been identified with a unique feature which you can now dispense into this position. And that is an honor on its own, because there are so many Zambians out there, including maybe you've got potential, I've got potential, everyone's got potential to be there. But if you are given opportunity to be there, then you want to abuse it to your own self, then that becomes a challenge. And I think what we basically have to do is that if nothing does not take place in this case, maybe let's learn to be the last thing, this one, so that the next thing that will happen, it should not even happen, because we have already made a learning position from this kind of situation that we have. The current scenario is giving that quantifiable benefits for us to actually change the course, meaning whatever happens next should not be anything near to this current scenario. Yes.
Finally, Kelvin, this end with the economy. We see resilience in the economy, and I think the government should be commended, having taken over a massive, date. What do you see, on the horizon? What would you like to see on the horizon in terms of, economic, development?
Okay, I would love to have a consistency in policy, especially in those key priority sectors that have earmarked to be of more of job creating sectors, and also those that are also basically showing some good elements of growth. Of course, we understand that the mining sector is always on the top. If we can sustain the policies within the mining sector and also make sure that the policy objective or drive toward 3 million metric tons of productive output is anchored from there, then that will be able to give us, benefit of doubt from there. Then again, the issue to do with the transportation. Zambia has a very good positioned, country where we are land linked. This should be playing into giving unparalleled economic influence, meaning we can now create trade corridors across. Look at Angola. We have never been able to develop Zambia with a very good trunk loads into Angola and many others. So we need to create that. Even if we are at the point of developing Lobito trade corridor rail line, it's an important aspiration. But also it's to come with a good motive to drive Zambia's SME as well as industrial activities out there. Angola is already posed to be a very good emerging country. Then agriculture. We've got tolerable land, which is estimated to be about 42 million hectares of land, which is not even cultivated. Only maybe 19% is what is cultivated from there.
Yeah.
So it's high time that maybe we drive a lot of energy and policy efforts toward making sure that we ramp up production in some of the key crops, cash crops for that matter, tobacco, maize, soya beans, sugar beans, and many others. We should be able to interplay strongly from there. Then when it comes to agriculture, livestock, and many others, we got a potential power. It's even at a point where we need now to do the mapping, mapping on where do we get most of the crops, where do we get enough rain pattern and or better rainfall. All those should be able to interplay from there. Then in terms of support on the farmers, I think the farmers are underperforming despite given support in the form of subsidies and many other FISIPU and many others. That is not something that is working out. So we need to consolidate all these efforts and see how best we can do extension based on validation as well, and also even looking at the post-harvest aspect. We need to drive effort from there. There is a $15 million on post-harvest projects. So we need to also look at how best can we coordinate things from that perspective. Then lastly, though I've got so many of them, but I'll consider to be the last in this case, tourism. We have untapped potential in tourism. We lack validation. With the mining in scope, we need to go to a position where we start now doing mining tourism. We need to start doing, if it's in health, we need to do hospital tourism or health tourism. All these validation aspects should be able to come on board. So Zambia has a lot of potential.
Right.
A lot of potential to a point where we have actually even been able to see that with the current appetite of the governance system today, I think if we're to just maybe fine-tune a few things here and there, we should be able to be on the right trajectory.
Right.
The debt restructuring process is an important aspiration that need to be able to reach to a conclusion. The immediate closure that we should be able to make on this, it will now give us a good benchmark in which we should be able to now to foster growth and sustain the economic balance from that perspective. So these and many others. If you were to go back into the aspect of SME as well, we are supposed to actually look at creating a very robust capital formation, which should be able to speak into the growth of the SME. Enterprise development is a key, and it has a core of demand for growth in this country. Zambia needs to have a very wide space for enterprises so that we can actually narrow the gap from the public sector. What I believe is that we need to have about 25% of Zambians working for government, 75% enterprising. Then we'll be able to feed into tax structure and many others. So I can speak so many things, but I can.
Excellent. On the corporate, governance. Obviously the key word is patriotism and taking on board, Zambia's interests against individuals.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Sure. That was, Kelvin Chisanga, an economist. We based our discussion on corporate governance and in particular what is happening in the corporate world in parastatals, where chairs chairman, ladies are taking over the position of CEO. It was my birthday on Monday. I turned 73. What a long journey. I would like to thank my God.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. And out of those,
On behalf of Zambians.
yes,
out there.
I've spent 55 years of that in the media, and I would like to thank all the media outlets, and including Prime TV, where I've rendered my services, and of course my church, my my family. And of course, viewers who keep me, going. Retirement. I don't know. I think you have to ask, God, about, that. And as usual, my birthdays are celebrated at Kawata, orphanage. For the last couple of years, I've been doing that. But because of what has been transpiring, the death of our sixth president, we have moved that celebration to the 28th of June. If you want to help me, have a wonderful birthday there, and I help my good friends at Kawata Orphanage, please, any little contribution will be appreciated. Finally, to the Zambians, I pray to the good Lord that the death of President Lungu does not divide us. Instead, it unites us. We have been known all over the world as one of the most united nations. Let's keep it to that, and let's bury the president, the former president, the late president, with dignity. And finally, let's reach out to the families of Dr. Lungu, in particular, the wife and the children, in this difficult moment. Those who have faced death will attest to the fact that this is a difficult time, and this is the time when we have to reach out. How do we do that? Prayers, prayers, prayers. Good night to you all.